What's pushing you to your limits? Welcome to Beyond the Brink. It's the show that explores global events that are pushing people to their limits and driving them to the brink of change. My name's Christy, and I'm here with Melissa.
Hi there.
Good to see you. For
Good to
those of
see
you
you.
watching us on YouTube and Rumble, would you give us a thumbs up or hit the Rumble button? That will help our channel grow a little bit more than it is now. And if you're
Please.
listening on the radio, you can find our previous shows at vitabroadcastnetwork.com. And we're on various podcast platforms, Spotify, iHeart, Podbean, audio.com, most of the major platforms. And you can find us under the handle at Vita Broadcast. Well, today's show touches home for both Melissa and I, which is one of the driving forces beyond the show, Beyond the Brink. And we're about to share an article where investigative reporter, he's actually a military investigator, combat expert, Brian O'Shea, he shares a hypothesis from a military combat expert's perspective. I want to be clear on that. It's just his perspective on how he would destroy America if he were America's enemy. And since it's Memorial Day weekend, we thought that this article was very well timed and something we should talk about. So without further ado, let's dig into today's topic.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting show, that's for sure.
Yeah. So the article is titled, "How Would I Destroy America If I Were America's Enemy?" And again, this is just a hypothesization, if I could say that correctly.
Yeah.
So who is Brian O'Shea? He's an investigator. He's a combat expert, and he's the husband of Dr. Naomi Wolf. I didn't know that until I researched that.
Yeah, I didn't either. Very interesting.
So he goes on to say, how would I destroy America if I were America's enemy? He made a few references that, gosh, really touched home here. He says you might look at Operation Desert Storm and Desert Shield and say, wow, 42, 48 days later, it's a perfect war. Boom, done, in and out. Hardly any of our military personnel were injured severely. Very few died. We can't fight these Americans kinetically traditionally. We're so spread out. So then if you back up and take a 30,000 foot view, you might say, but how could I fight America? So you might look at that and say, well, look at sanctions and look what it did to Iraq. Look at what the non-kinetic means of warfare did to Iraq. But would that work here with the largest economy in the world? Financial damage, exactly, to some extent, huh?
Yeah.
Financial damage, embargoes, you name it, brought them to their knees. But is it bringing us to our knees? What brought us to our knees almost was a complete and total shutdown.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you don't want to attack a superpower like us or any of the other superpowers in the world. You want to weaken them from within. I just want to let you sit back and think about that one for just a moment and let it kind of marinate in that and think a little bit about how that might just be going on today. So Brian offers up, I believe it's about 8 or 9 points here on how he would go about doing this. So first of all, he talks about technology transfer, stealing their technology and using it against them. Melissa, how many times have we heard about, let's take some of the big companies, some of the high-tech companies, Tesla, for instance. If you open up a subsidiary in the country of China, China owns a part of that company. They
Yeah.
want the intellectual property. So come on in on our shores, no problem. You want to sell your Teslas, you want to sell your Fords and your Chevys, no problem. But you're going to share your technology.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
likewise, if you come here, how
Hmm.
many people have been how many work for the high tech companies where they have been found to have taken intellectual property and have gone to their home country, most of the time, which is China, and
Yeah.
bring it back there?
You know, it was a couple of years ago when they had some stories coming out about China stealing our technology. And I it didn't get much media coverage, or the average person didn't seem to be too concerned about it. And I
Right.
remember thinking, it's not like I know a lot about about this stuff, but it struck a chord with me because I thought, if another country gets a hold of our technology, and the possibility to use that technology against us is pretty great. And if we like to consider ourselves as um you know main innovators for all of these high tech innovations that have come out, the fact that they've kind of been allowed to be infiltrated, really, because people look the other way when it comes to that. So I think I think we haven't really understood the damage that that could possibly do.
Or maybe
But
we
then,
have.
or maybe
There,
we have, yeah, true,
yeah,
true.
yeah, yeah. I
But
mean,
the thing is, too, with as far as the technology part goes, I mean, I don't the stealing part of it, that is the worst, because then they know where your weaknesses are, right? And they can build upon that and then infiltrate into in put back doors in and everything else, which I think has actually been the case with a lot of our technologies today, and we've just kind of you know went with
well,
it. But
and let's look at military technology. Look at some of their Navy ships.
yeah,
Look at some of their aircraft. These are not commercial airliners. These are
mm-mm.
military airliners that pretty much looks a lot like our own.
Well, and remember all of the planes, crashing, and just so many different things, and that they use technology. So it's pretty important to have your technology secure, and at least not let people in to put backdoors in. Um,
Right.
but yeah, so sorry, got
No, it's okay. This is a deep discussion and something I said from the very beginning, it touches us both deeply. Another way that you would infiltrate our country, break it down, is to gaslight us, fabricate stories, create
fear.
lies,
Yeah.
make people think that I'm so powerful that I just can't be stopped and you
Hmm.
should just give up. How much is that going on now?
A lot.
Gosh, there's a billion people ready to come along and could, you know, storm our shores if they
Hmm.
wanted to.
Hmm.
Or a little island adjacent to their country. We could just go ahead and bombard them, but hmm, it hasn't happened. I'm not saying that it won't, but that narrative has been out there, and it does make you sit back and take pause and think about the situation and how grave it is.
You know, I was just listening. One of my favorite shows that I've been listening to for a couple of years, called Table of Titans, and it's several guys, they offering their perspective and with world things going on. And anyway, our doc is one of the fellas on that show, and he mentioned something, and it really resonated with me, because I see it too. If you notice in the news, they've been recycling clips of whether it be people are on the way to the border, or people are, one class of people is beating up another class of folks, or whatever. And it is to instill fear into the American public. And fear is a liar. Fear is paralyzing, and they want us to be fearful. And like you say, their fabrication, that there's so many people coming off to over the borders that they're gonna come over and harm us, right? And so then you have a bunch of scared people, and they feel like there's nothing that can be done. And in reality, is it even true? We don't know. We're not there. We don't see them,
We
So
don't, but we're getting busloads.
true. But I'm just saying they do try to
They
perpetuate
do. Yes.
that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, I don't know.
One of the other things, if you were a military planner in another country and you wanted to destroy our country, maybe you might do it with narcotics. This has been going on since the Vietnam War days. You might
Long.
flood the nation with really, really bad addictive substances that overwhelm the public health system.
Mhm.
I was just a little kid when this was all happening, and thinking about uh, the people that were strung out on heroin, for instance. And I remember the imagery of seeing hippies laying out on the sidewalks in San Francisco,
Yeah.
just tripping with a needle hanging out of their arm. And ironically, having been to San Francisco not too long ago, I witnessed that myself going through a BART station. So this has been going on for, 2023,
Yeah.
nearly 60 years this has been going on. So these are very patient war planners. They know it's going to take a long time, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get closer to the end of the program, about why that is happening. Another way that you would be able to take a shot at America is using resources as warfare. So you can plunder the national resources of all other countries so no one else can have them. So that by 2025, everything has to go through me. I am the supply chain center. So think about Taiwan. Think about the Belt and Road countries. Why is the Belt and Road initiative even there? It isn't for bringing goodwill and prosperity to other countries. It is for something else. And even though that this is happening to America, it is happening to other countries by stealing resources, if you will, probably
Well,
to attack us.
well, yes, but I also think that America has done that to other countries.
Well, yes, one turn to another. Yes,
Yes.
indeed.
I mean, so if you like in our previous episodes where we talk about, who are these hidden folks, right, that are controlling everything.
Right.
And, it's just on a larger scale, but it's pitting one country against another or whatever. But it's the same bunch of people that are gaining control over all these countries. And just now, I mean, we're thinking, America is in threat, or, in what do I want to say? In jeopardy, perhaps, for some of the things that I think we've done. I mean, not as Americans, we don't realize it, but I think other countries probably feel like we've done that to them, So you're
Well,
right. The resources warfare is
yeah.
been going on for a very long time, right?
Well, if you look at some of the investigations that are coming to light, what you're saying is absolutely true. We have been interfering in other countries' elections, for instance. We have been involved in coups and taken down governments that we don't like, uh, all in the name of providing protection. It almost sounds like a cartel or a mafia, doesn't it?
It does, actually.
We'll protect you for pay.
Yeah,
You're
right?
just going to give us 10, 15% of everything you take in every week, and we'll have a collector come by and see you.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. Ugh. Mhm.
A small diversion here. It made
Yeah.
me just flash on the Tulsa King. Have you watched that show?
What is it called?
The Tulsa King.
I have not. I have
It's a
not seen it.
Sylvester Stallone series. It's very good. And it
Oh,
just brought me back to that on how cartels work. And Sylvester, I'll give you a short little snippet on this. Sylvester Stallone is part of the family. He went to prison for the family to keep secrets. And when he gets out of prison, he was removed from New York, if you will, and sent to Oklahoma so that he could still be relevant, but out of the family's business, so to speak, but still part of the family because the family still wants their take. So he finds a cannabis shop. There is nothing going on in Oklahoma, no crime, no problems there with this cannabis shop, but he creates a problem for them. And he says, you need protection, and I'll be here every week. It's just going to cost you 10%. It's a
Mm.
great show. It's
Problem,
entertaining.
reaction, solution, right?
Yes. So
That's the model.
if you want a little action show and a little laughter, watch the show. It's good.
I'll check it out. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for that little diversion there.
You're
So,
welcome.
so another way that you can attack America is with economic aid warfare. I'm going to pretend I'm helping other countries, especially the ones that don't like America. But then what is it that I'm really doing? I'm getting into those countries so I can start dictating to them on how to run their countries. We were just talking about that. I might
Mm.
even hand out vaccines to do that or
Yeah.
masks.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that was done to us as well. So
Mm-hmm.
during this period of time, I had a note written here about PPE to the United States and the United Kingdom, because those are things that we were running short of. And where did we have to turn to?
China.
Yes.
Which
So
I always thought that was
this is
really
a back and
odd.
forth thing.
It was really odd. The
Yes.
whole thing is ironic because, I mean, you had it and people are thinking like possibly it came from China and all of that, but yet we're going to trust our masks and all this stuff. It's like, what in the heck are we even doing right now? That's where, I mean, I just think a lot of this stuff is just so, it's projection, right? Because if I realize this particular Substack article is on China and what China has done to the United States, right? That they're infiltrating and stealing our technology and they're coming in onto our land and
Yeah.
all of this stuff. We have done that to other countries for a long time. We go in there and we want to change their culture. Oh, you're not a Christian? We're going to change your culture. You don't do this, we're going to change that. Or we're going to
Right.
just set up our shop here to protect your resources, right? But
Yeah.
it's a
Maybe
very
we'll
complicated thing,
set up our own police department so we can police our own people that are here.
right? Yeah. I mean,
Wow.
it's a wild
Yeah.
it's a wild thing. So yeah,
You
this is
know,
a really good Substack, guys. And as we progress through this is not all doom and gloom because we are going to
oh
go
no.
over some ways that uh what we can do, right?
Yeah.
So I
It's
just wanted to
stellar
interject
material.
in case somebody's listening and going like, I don't want to focus on the
Yeah.
negative, So
Oh
we're
no,
gonna talk
no.
about
We
positive.
have 3 more negatives here.
Yeah,
Stand by.
stand by.
Just hang in there. And Melissa just alluded to one of them, so we're going to get through this. The next way to do this is to hit us with regulatory warfare. Let's say I get my hands on some elected politicians and get them to start changing laws in favor for me. It's to weaken the country from within. Do we need to say anything else? Just look at the Durham report. If you have been under a rock, slip that rock out, come on out, get some fresh air, go find the Durham report, and you're going to get a load of information that you might just want to go crawl back under the rock because it's a lot, but it's something you need to know. The next one is the cultural warfare that Melissa was just talking about. You can convince our youth through something just to
TikTok?
try, TikTok, and get addicted to that and change your culture so that they start favoring a culture and don't even realize what their own culture is. It's almost like fentanyl for the online world. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think that our own culture has been broken down so much that Americans don't really even know what American culture is anymore, right? It's kind of,
I believe it started on our generation. Well, I'm a baby boomer Gen Xer. I'm right on the border. So I remember a lot of this happening when I was just a little kid, and I remember these conversations at home and how my folks were talking about how they were seeing things, and it was very concerning. And we had a push towards communism, and then there was a big push against communism. But just think about that. That was our generation. We have now grown up and have had our own children, and our children are having children. It's those generations that are making these changes happen. We planted the seeds in our own children, and they're planting it in their own children, and they don't even know it. For the most part. Many do, a lot don't.
It kind of goes back to that. It kind of goes back to that fourth turning that when we covered
it sure
that
does.
early on. I mean,
well said.
And as we go, if we're talking about something like the warfare, kind of sitting back and planning all this stuff out, well, if you recognize the fourth turning and all of those cycles, you could easily do it if you're very patient, right? Little by little by little, you break down the fabric, and
80 to 100 years.
Exactly. So,
And the last of this plan would be international lawfare. Now, you're going to find this one interesting. So you might find some governing body that can get through the boundaries of all of these other countries and start dictating to those people, regardless of their constitution or their sovereignty, how it's going to be. Maybe because there's an emergency. Maybe, I don't know, a pandemic.
Right?
Gee, I can think of the organizations where that might happen, where we've given these, they're not even governmental organizations, they're private organizations that we've given these rights to. I don't know, 3-letter agencies, 2-letter agencies. Let's see, the WEF, the WHO, HWO, or even the UN.
Yeah. And
there are many.
I think most people, I didn't really realize it. I think a lot of people don't realize that, when they think about the World Health Organization and, what was the one, the CDC, all these things, these are people that are not elected making really big decisions. And people have faith in the government, and they don't really realize that the people that are making these, changes and decisions and stuff, it's a very small amount of people, and you don't know who they are. You know nothing about them. And the further away we get from knowing anything about them, the worse it is for us, because, you just gave them a green light to do with whatever they want. And by the time you realize that they've done something, it's kind of already too late, well, I mean, that's the wah, 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 type thing about it. But I guess what we're trying to do with this show is, not scare people, not, be the bummers, but to kind of get people to start paying attention a little bit and ask some questions about, when you hear things about the CDC, start looking into these people.
Well, you got to wake the WTF up.
Yeah, we do.
This is big time. So let's run through these 8 points. That's technology, fabrication, narcotics warfare, resources warfare, economic aid warfare, regulatory warfare, cultural warfare, international warfare. And as we describe these, do any of these tactics sound familiar to you? Do you feel them existing in your own communities? Yes. So if you have, just ironically, this wasn't something that Brian thought up. It's actually been written about in a book called Unrestricted Warfare. And it was in a book that was written in 1999 by 2 Chinese colonels. Did you know about that?
No, I did not. That's interesting.
So the text is the basis and the core of Chinese military strategy that's strategically and tactically exercised today. It's their own writing, their own publication. It's happening right now. And I can see it in my own community. Melissa, I know you can see it in yours. I'm hoping that you can see it too.
Yeah.
So when you start looking at all these little pieces in conjunction, it starts to make sense to you. But if you look at them individually, you might just excuse some of it. But when you look at it in totality, in a total form, take that 30,000-foot view, it's very clear. You might be playing a chess game, and you can look at the entire chessboard at that point, and it starts to make sense.
Yep. Yeah.
And this has been going on for quite some time. I alluded back as far as Vietnam era, but Brian specifically says he feels it's about 20 years when it's really started ramping up. It's not the 2008 connection, although there is plenty of that there. But this really started back up around 2003 when we started outsourcing jobs to China. Who was in office then? I think we were just talking about that. One of those presidents in the previous show. And Trump has talked about this extensively as being an existential threat to this country, and probably one of the reasons why all of the things that have happened to him that has been outlined in the Durham report, we know all of what he was accused of doing was not true.
Yeah.
Apparently he's quite a threat for talking the truth.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, and what's really cool, and I know Bitcoin brought us here, is that we're a largely decentralized country. America is tough to topple because of that. We have 50 individual governments in this country, and all of the other countries fell easily because they were highly centralized. Our country, being 50 countries within a country, so to speak, if you would say, look at the state of California, the state of Texas, their economies are larger than many countries in the world. I think California is sitting at number 7 in the world. Texas is right up there. Florida is another one. So very powerful states within a large landmass, one country, United States. So, but here's what's more important is when you go beyond the state level, there's these jurisdictions called counties, and they have their own sovereignty as well. And this is tried and true where I live. Some of the things that have been going on in this county has made national news. as Melissa and I have talked about many times, because in this county, we understand our sovereignty. And there are other countries throughout the United States that are doing that as well. And there's groundswells coming up in their communities through these small jurisdictions. And we'll talk about it a little bit more about that later. So how do you subvert the United States form of government? Community warfare, like you talked about earlier. But there's even a deeper layer than that. And this is where it gets to the heart of the matter. You got to go to the churches, the mosques, the temples, and the synagogues.
Yep.
You've got to keep the people from meeting in those groups. The reason why is because they're like-minded people. They have something in common that brings them to church, synagogue, temples, you name it. It's a place where you feel safe and you feel good about hanging out with the people that are there. And that
not
is
to
very
mention,
dangerous.
yeah, not to mention the power of bringing like-minded folks together in prayer and the things that they can do through that, right?
Yes,
So
indeed.
if you can shut it down or make people afraid to gather in, large spaces because of potential threats, or if you can infiltrate the church or mosque or temples themselves with a bad actor, so to speak, and kind of change the narrative. That's another way that you can break down that very strong population.
We're having
So,
that now. You have cults, you have other bastardized groups, traditional groups that have been bastardized by these infiltrators, and they try to change the narrative. A small digression. You just made me think of our transportation secretary. This was just brought up, wasn't part of this article, but you hit the nail on the head. I got to talk about it. Secretary Buttigieg, hopefully we don't get bumped because of this.
but edge.
Yes.
Edge.
Well, when he was campaigning, he was talking about how Jesus was a migrant and how there should be no borders. There were no borders for Jesus. Well, that is a classic example of the bastardization of using scripture to bring forward a narrative that is not true. That is not how the Bible was meant to convey that message. And I don't recall, I am not an expert in the word at all. I am just a novice, but I don't recall there ever being a reference to him being a migrant. But the thing of it is, when you look at that and you look at some of his other activities as being a new parent and how he and his partner are using devices of a different gender to take care of their children. That is where they're using the word to bastardize a certain culture and a certain narrative, to break down traditions. Very dangerous. And it's used all the time by our politicians to form the narrative that they wish to form. And it goes directly against the churches and the synagogues and the temples, you name it.
Yeah,
Off the soapbox.
Yeah, they definitely have. They use the Bible and Christianity as a weapon, actually. Yeah. Although I will say, some would say that Christians have used that as a weapon also, depending on who you're talking to, and really it has no, they should not be doing that, period.
Well, there's other people, I won't even bring it up now, but you just got me thinking of another one where the Catholic Church was brought in, and a lot of those teachings were bastardized as well. Yes, manipulated. So how else do you make community warfare work and shut down these communities, you might be able to get, I don't know, a couple scores of scientists, buy them off maybe to write peer-reviewed articles and submit them to the National Institutes of Health and say why it's dangerous to meet, that these groups are meeting. Are these groups' germs different than anybody else?
Yeah.
It seemed like it was safer to go into a grocery store than to go to your church.
Yeah. That whole system has been manipulated.
When you think about it, how crazy this was.
Yeah, it really was. I think a lot of people now they're starting to I mean, I hate to keep using the wake up type thing, but I think a lot of people are starting to have some realization that, things didn't seem quite right. Now that the fear is kind of subsiding a little bit, pulling it back, and people are kind of thinking like very interesting. And now a lot of things are coming out that, those that don't want to see it, they're never going to see it. But those that are starting to see it, and they're kind of mad now, because a lot of lies were told, and the other thing that is damaging is, we want to have faith in our government and our, the institutions that we're paying into to help facilitate some really important things, and they've just like squashed credibility, and their trustworthiness is zero in my book at this point.
And
like you
infiltrated.
said, right, you get that, yes, and because we kind of weren't paying attention, or we just didn't know that that this could happen, and you got bad players in there, and look.
But we're going to talk about how to fix that. They're definitely, just hang in there. We're almost there. We're almost there. But just to go on, there's precedents for what we were talking about here, breaking up the family. In our country, we had heard for many, many years, it takes a village to raise the children. But that was also a convoluted statement, because what that meant is that many families would take care of their own. But what that statement meant is that you don't need a mom and a dad. You need a government. You need an agency, for instance. And this worked really well in the 50s and the 60s in China under the Mao regime, because family became secondary to the state. Mom and dad were irrelevant. It just didn't matter. Disrespect them. They don't know anything. Kind of like how the boomers are treated now. It's ironic that there are classes, I believe that they're starting in New York right now, about how to talk to older people, boomers. How to respect boomers, because they might have something to offer. So it's already here. It's just under. And
that should have been something that your parents taught you, for crying out loud.
Gosh, yeah. But you might not think that these are military strategy, but it certainly is. You don't have to have bombs going off and bullets going. You can use psychological warfare. We have been told for a very long time we're in the 5th generation warfare.
Yep. Isn't it? It's like a silent war.
Right. Why do we, when we do go to war, we always look at how many casualties that we can prevent. We're at a point where we don't want to lose anybody. We send drones. We do all sorts of things. So there's a saying that God of war has many faces. And the first rule of unrestricted warfare is that there's no rules. There is no rules. Back in the day, there were rules. And anything goes, and everything is the battlefield, including infiltrating churches, infiltrating families, getting in there and breaking them up. We're there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Once communities are broken up, things start to fall apart. Look at your big cities. It says it all. Look at some of your largest cities like San Francisco with poop maps, for instance. Businesses are closing down and moving out of there. Families can't go get groceries.
It's sad. It's sad.
Yes.
I've been listening to, some other channels and people. Somebody just talked about Lewis actually went to Dubai,
Yeah.
and he said Dubai is so clean.
Yeah.
It's almost like unreal clean. Like, I don't know if we want to be Dubai, or so to speak, but your shoes are clean from walking outside. It's so clean.
Right.
When you think about the destruction of our cities, what were so wonderful places, such wonderful places are just, as Trump called the one place the shithole.
Yeah.
Excuse my language, but a lot of these cities are shitholes now, destroyed. Why is this allowed to happen? This is horrific. It's so sad. It's terrible.
I remember seeing men and women pushing push brooms on sidewalks. They worked.
Yeah.
They might have been receiving some sort of subsidy at the time, but they were working and contributing to their communities. I'm talking about San Francisco, being able to walk through San Francisco once upon a time where the streets were really clean. And even though you saw transients, they were still sleeping on the sidewalks then, but it would be every now and then, and they certainly weren't as aggressive as they are now. But you just walked by them, you give them a smile, you treated them like they were a human being. Many of them were out there pushing those brooms.
Yeah.
They were contributing because they wanted to get a hot meal. They wanted to have a place where they could sleep safely at night. It wasn't always on the streets. In fact, it wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
So have you ever heard, so the way that they work is that they attack from the bottom up. They get in and they kind of plant a seed and they grow up from there. And that's how countries, how the CCP gets into countries all around the world. Have you heard this statement? I know you have, top down, bottom up, inside out. How many times have we heard that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's
A lot.
see. Van Jones, he's a devout communist. We have been told many times when Obama was running about
I didn't know
how he
that.
was going to build up the economy. It was going to be from top down, bottom up, inside out. And Joe Biden's been talking about that as well. If you think about his campaign speeches and when he, I believe it was in his, when he was sworn into office, well, when he took office, let's put it that way. So let's get into the good stuff, because this is stuff we have control over. So now you know what the problem are and what we've been dealing with, maybe things that we have put a blind eye to. I know I certainly have. I think you have too, Melissa.
Yeah.
But because we're awake, we know we have to take action, not only for our families, but for our children and our grandchildren. So how do you defend yourself? You focus on the 3 F's. That's friends, family, and faith. It's easy, but it's hard. It's easy, but it's hard, because in some ways you have to reinstitute old habits that you thought were out of date. Maybe, oh, that's just old school.
Yeah.
Or making some new habits because you haven't even been exposed to some of the things that we're going to suggest. So if you're going to break up, if you're going to fight someone who's trying to break up your family, who would you start with? Would it be your friends and try to get influence on them?
Yeah, for sure.
So you want to start protecting your friends. You want to make sure, and I'm not talking about physical protection, but help them with their minds and help them nourish their minds with truth and facts, not this convoluted stuff, because much of the convoluted stuff is not backed up with anything.
You know what really helped me, and my Ryan did this for me a lot when we first met. I would make a statement or have an opinion about something, and he would just ask me why.
Right.
Why? Why? Well, what backs that up? Why are you thinking that way? And then it's like, wow, I realized a lot of things that I might have, opinions I had or whatever. I'm like, do I really feel that way, or am I regurgitating something because it's easy? And it really forced me to look in things a little bit deeper. And some things I remained steadfast on, and I kept my same. And other things I was like, I think about that a little differently now that I looked into it a little deeper. So I think with our friendships, if we just ask questions with one another and listen to what they say, is a way to protect them in a way that allows them to protect themselves by asking questions. So,
And you'll find that if you participate in your community, you'll often hear that speak as well, where, well, it's always been done this way.
mhm,
We well, it's only fair to everybody that we charge three different rates for something that costs the same to produce,
mm,
because it doesn't make any sense unless you're able to break it down. And so having your conversations with your friends where you can break down these concepts, for instance, it will work its way up to
mm,
those who are making decisions on our behalf.
yeah,
So you need to look out in the community. What's going on? Nothing's innocuous. It's all out there if you're just going to pay attention.
right.
So, and we got this far because we weren't paying as good attention as we are now. And some people in this country were able to gain so much power because we're all pretty nice people. We're willing to just, turn our back, well, it's just a tree, it's just a statue. They can cordon off that and, do some experiments on it. Whatever the case is, it's okay. It's just this one little sliver.
Yeah.
But those slivers get to be more and more and more. Or they're just doing their own lifestyle thing. It's their deal. I don't judge. It's not for me to judge. Let's just
You
let
know,
that go.
it's something you're like striking a chord with me right now, because I think about, my own personal life and certain things that I let go over time. And I'd say, oh, that's not that big of a deal. That's not that big of a deal. That's not that big of a deal. And years down the road, that collection of not that big of a deals was this huge just elephant on my shoulders,
Yeah.
just it got a stranglehold, and to where you're like, no, this is a big deal. These little big deals are a huge deal.
Yeah, they
And
sure are.
so yeah, I think and we definitely we have to keep an eye on that stuff.
So we got about 10 minutes left. So let's whip through this so that everybody gets all
Okay.
of the good stuff. So
Yep.
the other part is family. Have dinner with your at the table. Do it for the kids.
Do it for the kids.
Have a family meal. It was important growing up. There was a reason for it. You could find out what's going on in everybody's life because everybody's so busy. But when you're sitting there eating, you
Mhm,
have to sit and be with everybody. So just make
mhm.
it important and build a sense of importance of family, the importance of manners, the importance of ethics and values. That's built at the dinner table. And our
Yeah.
children are our islands, so let's protect them. Turn off the TV and greatly limit what's watched in your home.
Yes. Well,
Huge.
one other thing too is that you're eating dinner with your family. You're building that relationship with them, but it's an intentional. You're breaking bread together, right? You're
Right.
sitting at the table, and so there. I think there's a little bit more to. You're nourishing your body. Whereas if you're sitting in front of the television eating a hamburger or something like that,
Right.
it's not the same. It just
No,
isn't. And
there's
it is
not
so important.
conversation.
No. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Even the way the table is arranged, you will have eye contact, you have closeness with each other. You
And
have to
it's
say, hey,
structure.
pass this, pass that. You're talking to each other.
It's structure too.
Yes, it
It's
is.
structure, and it's the good old, you something you can rely on. A child can rely on every night we're going to have family dinner together,
Right.
and this is going to be the time when we're in our safe zones and we're just going to eat, and everything's calm. So,
You
yeah,
got it.
that's great advice.
The next one is faith. Enable your children to grow up having values, believing in something and something that's good. Believe in God so they have a compass. The way you wreck a country and take it over is to take away people's vision of their path to home.
Yeah.
If they don't know how to get home, they're going to give up.
Yep.
And if they can't see home, and Sun Tzu says this, they'll fight to the death. So I should say, if they can see home,
Yeah.
they have a compass to get home, they'll fight till their death. Many of our veterans, and the reason for Memorial Day is because they had a vision of something that they believed in, and they fought to their death. They fought for us.
Yeah.
So another thing is investigate everything, do your own research. If you ever heard of the case Kitty Genovese, it's the girl who got murdered in the courtyard of her apartment building while a bunch of people just stood around and watched. That happened because everyone else thought somebody else would do something.
Yeah.
So nobody did anything.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in that situation?
I'm embarrassed to say, yes, I have, went
too.
past something. Oh, yeah. So
We all have. So we want to work on not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
Now we're all the cops now. We're all the cops. We can't
See
rely on
something,
the
say
police
something.
officer. Yes.
Remember
But be
that?
careful about when you see
I
something, say
say
something.
something. I know. Isn't that interesting?
Yes. See how it's all turned around?
Yes.
Investigate. If you see something and it's not immediate, like somebody getting pummeled, shot, something like that, but you're seeing something, investigate it before you report it.
Yeah.
I think that's just probably the best way to go.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple other things. And now's the time to strengthen our relationships with friends, family, and God, because we're approaching two major waypoints. This is huge. 2025 made in China. This is when China will own the entire supply chain. They're this close. They're this close. If they have Taiwan and they have control of all the semi-precious minerals and to make all of the semiconductors, and one of the biggest stores of all those minerals is in Afghanistan. What the hell just happened? We gave it up in 2021. What the hell is going on with that?
Yeah.
The other one is Tibet. And then I'll finish up. We'll go back and wrap this up. The China Dream, 2049. That's 100-year anniversary of the CCP. They're patient people. This has been going on for a very long time. 1949, end of World War II, in that era. It's in that era. And then we had subsequent wars afterward. It's no surprise that this stuff is going on. The goal is that of their 100-year anniversaries, the goal is that they will rule the world. If you don't believe it, it's something that they've said. Our own translators have said, yeah, they want to smite us from the earth. Believe it. They're very serious and they're not hiding it. So friends, family, faith, and building like-minded communities are the key.
Yeah.
Yeah. The biggest nightmare of any enemy attacking this country is the fact that there's a bunch of communities that govern themselves and they don't want anyone telling them what to do. And once they link up with other communities, it's unstoppable. And they know that.
Mm-hmm.
So I live in a community like that, and I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, I like that your community is fighting back, and I see it across the United States. I see that that happening more and more, and just getting back, like you say, to the family, faith, and friends, and trying to support local farmers, and all those things are
so big.
It's what's going to save us, really.
I'm fortunate to have the time to do some civic work. So I sit on a county commission. I see a lot of things. I've done this for a couple of years now. I see a lot of things going on in the county that are not okay. I participate in our city council. I see things there that are not okay, that are bestowed on us by the state. Absolutely.
So how many people are on this committee? How many people are on this committee that you're on?
This one committee, this commission that
Hmm.
I'm on, it's
Yeah.
8. It's a representative from 4 jurisdictions, 3 cities, and 5 districts.
Okay. And what kind of decisions and control can they have for your community? What kind
We
of
are
effect can they have?
Okay, so we are supposed to evaluate and provide recommendations to our board of supervisors who run the county. So, what's happened in the past and how we were washed down, if you will, is for the last several years, our commission never did any evaluations of anybody. We just received presentations from various agencies who they were basically filling the time because this is a state required commission. It has
Mhm.
to run, every county has one. So we were just having a coffee club, so to speak. That's how
Mhm.
I looked at it.
It's to check
Now
off
we're
that box. It's to check off
Yes,
the box. In the event of an audit, are you guys doing this? Yes, we are. But you're
now that
really
we've yeah, now that we've flexed our muscles and have revitalized this commission and we're doing evaluations, we're getting a lot of pushback. We're getting pushback in the city as well. It's happening all over. Another council that I'm sitting on, I've just started to look at is one of our school boards. That's an interesting place as well. There's quite a bit of politics going on there, quite a bit
Mhm.
of push on who has control over our children. The state wants to control, and the parents are saying, no, we want to control our children. We want to control what our children are learning. Huge push. Um, Lots of money coming into the community to have recall measures. It never stops, Melissa. It's going
Mhm.
on all over, and you can literally get tired from all of this, from everything that's happening. But when you sit back and you go, well, by participating, you feel like you've done something, and with enough people participating, you can make change. General Flynn says local change has national impact, and I do believe that. Just as I've alluded to a couple of times with what's happened in this community that has made nationwide news, we were able to get rid of the Dominion voting machines, for instance. And that's
Wow.
one of the few counties in the entire country that has done that. It's a
That's
lot
a
of pushback. There's a
well,
lot
and
of pushback on it.
the reason I asked you that question is because, people are so like they see the people on TV, the Congress and the representatives and, as having the power and the president and all of that. But at your county level, you've got, 8 people on your committee that if they weren't doing their jobs, like now you are, right? But if you just the paper pusher, whatever, check the box, if there's nobody doing their job at that level, um, eh, 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 so many things can happen under your nose that you know,
It
so those
has.
those 8 average Joes that are serving on these committees have a lot of power. You wouldn't think that you would, but such an important job. But when you look at like how big the world is or how big the United States is or your community,
Yeah,
it's a small amount of people that are making these decisions or allowing things or money to be spent or whatever. It's just incredible. And I know I didn't. I'm guilty of not really understanding that the way things are, and I thought, oh, I vote,
yeah.
so
Well, we're going to have to leave it there. This has been a robust conversation and one we can go much farther with. Bottom line is just get involved in any level that you can, even if it's just starting to have dinner with your family.
yeah.
So if you want to follow more on Brian O'Shea, you follow him on Substack. That's brianocshea.substack.com. And I think we're going to have to call this a wrap.
All
Until
right.
next time, this is Christy and Melissa out for Beyond the Brink.
Have a
See you
great
next
day,
time.
guys.
Bye
Bye.
bye.